We all have that inner voice, right? That feeling like, yeah, I know myself pretty well.
We do. It feels pretty solid, that sense of self.
But okay, let's dig into that because there's some research that honestly throws a bit of a curveball.
Hmm.
It suggests that only about 10 to 15% of people actually show high levels of self-awareness.
Which is a really startling gap, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights why we're doing this deep dive today. It's so important.
Definitely. This isn't just theory. Understanding self-awareness, really understanding it, affects, well, everything, how we live, how we interact.
Absolutely. So for this exploration, we're drawing mainly on the work of Dr. Tasha Eurich. She's an organizational psychologist.
Right, but we're also bringing in perspectives from people like Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and Chris Argyris, too.
Yeah.
Some really key thinkers in this space.
So the goal here is pretty simple. Let's get clear on what self-awareness actually is, bust some myths, and give you some practical ways to, build it for yourself. Think of it like a roadmap to knowing yourself and maybe others a bit better.
And that clarity, it really does lead to tangible improvements. Like Eurich's research shows people with higher internal self-awareness often feel much more aligned with their jobs.
Higher job satisfaction. Makes sense.
Yeah, significantly higher.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of it then. What is self-awareness? Dr. Urich's breakdown seems really useful here. She splits it into two
It
types.
does, and it's a really fundamental distinction. So first up is internal self-awareness.
Okay.
This is about how clearly you see your own inner world,
Eh,
like your core values, your passions, what you aspire to.
What makes you tick?
Exactly.
Right.
And also how you fit with your environment, your typical reactions, emotional reactions especially, and crucially, the impact you have on other people.
Right. And she connects this internal clarity to some really big outcomes. You mentioned job satisfaction, but also relationship satisfaction.
Yes, and a greater sense of personal control, social control, and just overall happiness.
That's the stuff we're all looking for, isn't it? That internal compass really matters.
It provides that direction, definitely. But then there's the second type, which is just as critical, external self-awareness.
Okay, so internal is looking in, external must be looking out. How others see us.
Precisely. It's understanding how other people view you on those same factors, your values, your impact, your strengths, maybe your weaknesses too.
Got it. So how am I coming across?
Yeah. And here's a really interesting finding, especially for leaders. When your self-view aligns with how others see you, that's powerful.
How so?
It builds stronger relationships, boosts your effectiveness. It helps close those blind spots that can trip you up, even if you have good intentions.
Right. Like you think you're being clear, but the team is totally confused.
Exactly. Your internal sense doesn't match the external reality of how your message landed.
Okay, now here's the part I found really fascinating, maybe a bit counterintuitive. These two types, internal and external, they're independent.
That's right. They operate separately. You can be really insightful about your own feelings and motivations,
Sure.
but be completely oblivious to how your tone of voice is affecting someone, or, the other way around.
So being good at one doesn't mean you're good at the other.
Not automatically, no. It's a really crucial point. Many people think, oh, I spend a lot of time thinking about myself, so I must be self-aware.
Yeah, like introspection equals insight.
But Urich's work really challenges that. You can navel gaze for hours, but that won't tell you if your colleague feels heard or dismissed by you.
Which kind of leads us neatly into some of the pitfalls, right? The common mistakes people make. That introspection point is a big one.
It is. The danger is falling into what we might call unproductive rumination.
Just spinning your wheels mentally.
Yeah, getting stuck in these loops, often asking why. Why did that happen? Why did I feel that way? Eurich argues this kind of backward-looking why analysis can actually hinder self-awareness.
Okay, so if why isn't the right question,
Yeah.
what is? She suggests shifting focus, right?
Yes, shifting from why questions to what questions.
Can you give an example, like the difference between the two?
Sure. So a why question might be, why did I get so defensive in that meeting?
Yeah.
It can put you on the defensive again or lead to excuses.
Right, I can see that.
But a what question is more like, what was going through my mind right before I got defensive? Or what can I do differently next time a similar situation comes up?
Okay. It feels more actionable, forward-looking.
Exactly. It focuses on learning, on future behavior, on concrete actions, rather than just getting bogged down in past feelings or justifications. It's about moving forward.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about extracting the lesson, not just replaying the event. And, well, this brings us back to that pretty shocking statistic.
But 95% versus the 10-15%.
Yeah. Like, almost everyone thinks they're self-aware, but the reality, according to the research, is, well, very different. That's a huge perception gap.
It really is. It shows that feeling like you know yourself isn't the same as actually having that deep internal and external understanding.
And you mentioned this gap can get wider in certain situations, like leadership roles.
Yes, there's this interesting dynamic where increased power can sometimes, paradoxically, decrease self-awareness.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. As you move up, people might become less willing to give you truly candid feedback.
They don't want to criticize the boss.
Right. They might sugarcoat things or just not say anything critical at all. So you end up in a bit of an echo chamber.
Which reinforces your own view of yourself, even if it's inaccurate.
Exactly. You get less of that crucial external perspective needed to keep your self-perception grounded. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, feedback-wise.
Okay, so knowing all this, the two types, the pitfalls like rumination, the power dynamic, how do we actually build this? How do we get better at it? Eurich has some practical strategies, yeah.
She definitely does. One of the most powerful ones is actively seeking feedback, but specifically from people she calls loving critics.
Loving critics. I like that phrase. Who are they?
These are the people in your life. It could be friends, family, mentors, trusted colleagues who genuinely have your best interests at heart.
Okay.
And they have the courage to tell you the truth, even when it's maybe a bit difficult to hear. They want you to grow.
So they care enough to be honest, not just nice.
Precisely. They'll offer that constructive, necessary feedback.
And the key is not just having these people around, but actively asking them.
Right.
And doing it regularly.
Yes, absolutely. It's an ongoing practice. Developing that external self-awareness isn't a one-shot deal. You need to regularly check in, ask about specific situations, specific behaviors.
Like, how did I handle that presentation? Or what was the impact when I said X?
Exactly. Those kinds of specific questions help bridge that gap between how you think you're doing and how others are actually experiencing you.
And we should also remember the other piece, the internal work. Reinforcing that shift to what questions?
Definitely. Keep asking those what questions during reflection. What happened? What were my thoughts, feelings? What could I learn? What are my options now?
It keeps it productive, avoids getting stuck.
Right. It makes a reflection more goal-oriented, less likely to trigger defensiveness or just, spinning in circles. It pushes towards action, towards improvement.
And ultimately, it's about finding that balance, isn't it? Developing both the internal understanding and the external perspective.
That's the goal. You need both. Focusing only on your internal world leaves you blind to your impact. Focusing only on others' perceptions might mean you lose touch with your own values.
So they work together.
Absolutely. They inform each other. It's about integrating both for a really holistic self-awareness.
Okay, so Eurich's framework is really clear. Internal, external, loving critics, what's questions? But you mentioned other thinkers too, like Daniel Goleman and Argyris. How do their ideas add to this picture?
Well, Goleman, famous for his work on emotional intelligence, really positions self-awareness as the absolute foundation.
The starting point for EI.
Exactly. He emphasizes recognizing your own emotions as they happen and understanding how those emotions affect your thoughts and actions.
Okay.
And he strongly links this to practices like mindfulness, paying attention non-judgmentally to the present moment.
Yeah.
That practice helps you tune into your internal state. Notice those subtle emotional shifts, which directly boost that internal self-awareness Eurich talks about.
So mindfulness is like a training tool for internal awareness. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And Argyris, you mentioned a ladder of inference. What's that about?
The ladder of inference. It's a really useful model for understanding how we think, often unconsciously. It basically describes how we move from observable data, something someone says or does, up this mental ladder. We select some data, add meaning based on our own beliefs, make assumptions, draw conclusions, adopt those beliefs, and then take action.
Wow, okay. So we jump from observation to action really fast, often without realizing all the steps in between.
Precisely. And those steps are filled with our own interpretations and biases. Like your example earlier, someone doesn't reply to an email.
Right. Data. No reply. Jump up the ladder. They're ignoring me. They don't respect me. Conclusion, I won't collaborate with them.
Exactly. You climb that ladder without checking your assumptions. Maybe their server was down, or they were just swamped.
So becoming aware of the latter helps you pause, question those assumptions.
Yes. It helps you recognize you're making interpretations. You can ask yourself, what's the actual data here? What assumptions am I making? Are there other ways to interpret this? It slows down that jump to conclusions.
And that process of questioning your own thinking process, that directly boosts self-awareness too.
Absolutely. It helps you understand why you react the way you do, how your beliefs shape your actions. It adds another layer to that internal understanding.
Okay, this is incredibly helpful. So wrapping things up a bit, we've seen self-awareness isn't just one thing. It's got these two parts, internal and external.
Right. Knowing yourself and knowing how others see you.
And we've learned that just thinking about yourself, that kind of simple introspection, isn't the magic bullet. It might even lead you down the wrong path with rumination.
Mm-hmm. The what questions are key.
And actively seeking feedback, finding those loving critics is super important for that external piece.
Crucial for bridging that perception gap.
And remembering that this isn't something you just achieve. It's an ongoing process, right?
Definitely. It takes continuous effort, real openness to learning, sometimes hearing things you maybe don't want to hear, and a commitment to keep growing.
Okay, so here's something for you, the listener, to take away and think about. Consider one area of your life, work, relationships, maybe a hobby where you feel pretty self-aware. Based on everything we've talked about, what's just one what question you could ask yourself about your behavior or impact in that specific area?
Or who is one potential loving critic you could reach out to for some honest perspective on that area?
Exactly. Just take one small step. Start exploring that space between how you see yourself and how the world might see you. That's where the really interesting growth happens.
Well said. It's a fascinating journey.
It really is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.